April 1945. A German military doctor stands face to face with an American officer and says the words no Nazi ever thought they would hear themselves speak. We cannot save them. Only you can. This is the true story of the moment pride died and humanity survived. The makeshift hospital smelled like death and something worse. Despair. Dr. Friedrich Weber had been a physician for 20 years, but nothing in his training at the University of Berlin, nothing in his experience treating soldiers on 3 different fronts had prepared him for this. The medical camp sat just outside the small German town of Waldheim that American forces were approaching fast. Inside the crumbling 2-story building that had once been a school, over 200 wounded German soldiers lay on filthy cots, waiting to die. Not from their wounds, not from enemy fire, from something far more preventable, from neglect, from the collapse of everything the Reich had promised would last 1,000 years. Weber moved between the rows of wounded men, checking pulses and changing bandages that should have been thrown away weeks ago. Each bandage had been washed and reused so many times the fabric was falling apart in his hands. There was no morphine left, no anesthesia, no sulfa drugs, and worst of all, no penicillin. That miracle drug he had read about in captured Allied medical journals. The drug that was saving thousands of British and American soldiers while German boys died from infections their grandfathers could have survived with proper care. Young men who survived bullets and shrapnel were dying from simple infections that any competent doctor with adequate supplies could have treated just 2 years earlier. The sound in the hospital was unbearable. Not screaming. Screaming would have meant the men still had strength. Instead, it was moaning. Low, constant moaning punctuated by fevered mumbling and the occasional death rattle. Weber had learned to recognize that sound. The wet, gurgling breath that meant a man had minutes left. He heard it now from the far corner. Another one. Another boy who would die today for no good reason. Ernst Müller was 19 years old. He had been shot in the leg 3 weeks ago during a skirmish with advancing American troops near the town of Eisenach. The bullet had gone clean through the calf muscle. It should have been a survivable wound. A simple injury. In peacetime, Weber could have cleaned it, sutured it, prescribed antibiotics, and sent the boy home to his mother in 2 weeks. But this was not peacetime. This was the death throes of the Third Reich, and there was nothing simple anymore. Without proper antibiotics, the wound had become infected. Then the infection had turned to gangrene. Now the flesh of his leg was rotting black and green, and the smell was so unbearable that the other patients had begged Weber to move Ernst to a separate room. But there were no separate rooms. There was only this one large hall filled with dying men and the stench of their collective suffering. Ernst looked up at Weber with fevered eyes that did not quite focus. His skin was the color of old newspaper and covered in sweat. "Herr Doctor, will I see my mother again?" His voice was barely a whisper. Weber wanted to lie, to give the boy hope, to tell him that everything would be fine, that the supply trucks were coming, that reinforcements were on the way, that the Führer had a plan, but he was tired of lying. The Reich had lied to all of them, told them they were the master race, told them victory was their destiny, told them they would rule the world for 1,000 years. Now the world was ending and they did not even have bandages. Weber placed a hand on Ernst's burning forehead. The heat radiating from the boy's skin was alarming. The infection was spreading to his blood now. Sepsis. Once that started, there was no stopping it without antibiotics. Rest now. We will do everything we can. It was the only truth he could offer. The only words that were not a complete lie. They would do everything they could. It just was not going to be enough. Ernst closed his eyes and Weber moved on to the next patient, knowing that by tomorrow morning, the boy would likely be dead. Another name to add to the list. Another mother who would receive a letter written in careful bureaucratic language informing her that her son had died heroically for the fatherland. Nurse Anna Bergman stood at the supply cabinet staring at empty shelves. She had been standing there for 5 minutes just staring as if the bandages and medicine might materialize if she looked hard enough. She was 24 years old and had volunteered for the Medical Corps in 1942, believing she was serving a glorious cause, believing the propaganda films, believing the speeches about German superiority and the sacred mission to cleanse Europe. Now she understood there was nothing glorious about watching young men die, because your country had thrown away everything in a war it could never win. Nothing sacred about gangrene and dysentery, and the slow, agonizing deaths of boys who should have been studying at university or working on their father's farms or falling in love. Dr. Weber. Anna's voice cracked. She cleared her throat and tried again. Dr. Weber, we are out of iodine. We are out of alcohol. We are out of sulfa powder. We are out of everything. Weber nodded slowly. He already knew. He had known for days. The supply lines had collapsed weeks ago. The Luftwaffe could not fly because there was no fuel. The trains did not run because the tracks had been bombed. The trucks did not arrive because the drivers had deserted or been killed or simply disappeared. The entire infrastructure of the Reich was disintegrating like wet paper, like a castle made of sand being washed away by the tide. Then what do we do? Anna asked. Her hands were shaking. She was still wearing her nurse's uniform, but it was filthy now, stained with blood and worse things. Her blonde hair that had once been pinned in perfect regulation braids was falling loose around her face. She looked exhausted. Weber looked at her and saw his own despair reflected back at him. We wait. For what? For the Americans. Anna's eyes went wide. You cannot be serious. We are supposed to resist. We are supposed to fight until the last man. Fight until victory or death. That is what they told us, that is what. Weber cut her off with a sharp gesture. Until what, Anna? Until every last one of these boys dies. Until we have sacrificed every young man in Germany on the altar of a madman's delusions. Anna, look around you. Look at them. They are children. They believed what they were told. And now they are paying the price. I will not let them die for a regime that does not care if they live or die. Anna was silent for a long moment. Then she whispered, They will call us traitors. They will say we betrayed the fatherland. Weber laughed, but there was no humor in it. The fatherland betrayed us, Anna. They sent these boys to war with lies. They promised them glory and gave them death. Before he could finish, the door burst open with a bang that made several of the patients cry out. SS Officer Richter strode in wearing his black uniform, still somehow immaculate despite the chaos collapsing around them. His boots were polished. His insignia gleamed. He was everything Weber despised. A fanatic who cared more about ideology than human life. A true believer in a cause that had proven itself hollow and evil. Richter surveyed the room with barely concealed disgust, as if the suffering men were an inconvenience rather than human beings. What is this? Richter demanded. His voice was sharp and cold. Why are these men still here? They should have been evacuated days ago. This is unacceptable, Dr. Weber. Unacceptable. Weber felt rage boil in his chest. A rage that had been building for months, for years. Evacuated where Herr Richter. With what transport? We have no vehicles, no fuel, no ambulances. These men cannot be moved without killing them faster than the infections already are. So please enlighten me. Where exactly should I evacuate them to? Richter's face hardened. His hand moved instinctively toward his holster. You will watch your tone, doctor. I am not one of your patients. I represent the authority of the Reich, and you will show proper respect. Weber stepped closer. He was past caring about consequences now. They are not soldiers anymore, Herr Richter. They are patients. And I am their doctor. My duty is to save lives, not throw them away for the sake of your pride or anyone else's. Richter's eyes narrowed. Careful, doctor. Defeatism is treason, and treason carries only one sentence. Weber did not back down. He met Richter's gaze without flinching. Then shoot me. Go ahead. Add one more body to the pile. But it will not change the fact that in 2 days, maybe 3, the Americans will be here, and these men will finally get the care they deserve, the medicine they need, the treatment that might actually save their lives. For a long, tense moment, the two men stared at each other. The room was silent, except for the moaning of the wounded. Anna held her breath. Several of the patients who were conscious enough to understand what was happening watched with wide, frightened eyes. Finally, Richter's hand moved away from his pistol. You are a fool, Weber. A sentimental fool. When the Reich rises again, and it will rise again, you will be remembered as a traitor and a coward. Then he turned on his heel and walked out. The door slammed behind him. Weber released a breath he had not realized he was holding. His hands were shaking. Anna came to his side. That was incredibly dangerous. He could have shot you. Weber nodded. I know. But I meant every word. Anna looked at him with something like admiration. What happens now? Now we prepare for the Americans, and we hope they are better men than we have been. That night Weber sat alone in his small office on the second floor. It had once been the school principal's office. There were still children's drawings pinned to one wall, faded now. A reminder of a time before the war when this building had been a place of learning instead of dying. On his desk was a kerosene lamp burning low, a nearly empty bottle of schnapps, and a medical journal from 1943 that he had taken from a captured American medic. The journal had an article about penicillin, the miracle drug. Weber had read it so many times he could recite passages from memory. He had read about how American soldiers were surviving wounds that would have killed anyone else. How infections that should have been death sentences were being cured in days. How amputation rates had dropped dramatically because wounds could be treated before gangrene set in. Meanwhile, German soldiers died because the Reich had focused all its resources on V-2 rockets and Tiger tanks and wonder weapons that were supposed to win the war, but only prolonged the suffering. Weber poured himself another glass of schnapps and stared at the journal. He thought about Ernst Müller dying downstairs. Thought about all the other boys he had watched die over the past months, hundreds of them, thousands across all the hospitals and field stations, all dying from preventable causes, all sacrificed to a regime that valued ideology over human life. Anna knocked softly on the door and entered without waiting for a response. She looked as exhausted as he felt. You really meant it, didn't you? About surrendering to the Americans. Weber poured her a small glass. He knew she did not usually drink, but these were not usual times. I am not surrendering, Anna. I am asking for help. There is a difference. Surrender implies defeat. This is triage. This is recognizing that we cannot save these men alone, that our pride is worth less than their lives. But they are the enemy, Anna said, though her voice lacked conviction. The words sounded hollow even to her. Are they, Weber asked quietly. Or are we? Think about it, Anna. Who started this war? Who invaded peaceful countries? Who built camps? Who? He stopped himself. Some truths were still too dangerous to speak aloud even now. Anna sat down heavily in the chair across from him. My brother died at Stalingrad. Hans. He was 23. They told us he was a hero, that his sacrifice mattered, that he died for Germany's glory. But it didn't matter, did it? It was all for nothing. Weber reached across the desk and squeezed her hand. I am sorry, Anna. I am so sorry. We were all lied to. All of us. But we can still do one good thing. We can save these men. We can choose to value life over ideology, over pride, over everything we were taught. Anna nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? Be ready. When the Americans come, we show them the white flag immediately. No resistance, no hesitation. We make it clear we are asking for humanitarian aid. Anna wiped her eyes. They might shoot us anyway. I know, but I don't think they will. I have read about them, about their medical corps. They take an oath. First, do no harm. Let us hope they mean it. The next morning came too soon and too slowly at the same time. Weber had not slept. He had sat in his office listening to the sounds of the hospital below, the moaning, the occasional cry, the sound of Anna making her rounds trying to provide comfort when medicine was unavailable. Around dawn he heard it, the rumble of engines in the distance, deep and powerful, American tanks. The sound that once represented his worst fear now represented his greatest hope. Weber walked outside into the cool morning air. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It would have been beautiful if not for the smoke rising from distant burning buildings. The rumble grew louder. Then he saw them, a column of American Sherman tanks rolling down the main road. Dust rising behind them, the white star insignia visible on their hulls. The stars and stripes flying from antennas. The war was over, at least for this small corner of hell. SS Officer Richter appeared one final time emerging from the tree line where he had apparently spent the night. He looked different now, less certain. His uniform was dirty, his face unshaven. The collapse was visible even in true believers. You are a traitor, Weber. A coward. History will remember you as the doctor who betrayed his country. Weber looked at him calmly. History will remember me as a doctor who chose life over death, who valued human beings over ideology. Can you say the same, Herr Richter? Can you honestly say that when you face whatever judgment awaits us all? Richter had no answer. His hand moved to his pistol one last time, but he did not draw it. Perhaps he realized it was pointless. Perhaps he simply no longer cared. He turned and disappeared back into the woods, a ghost of a failed regime. Weber never saw him again. He heard later that Richter had been found dead in those woods. Whether by his own hand or someone else's, no one knew. The American tank stopped about 50 meters from the hospital. Soldiers poured out, moving with disciplined efficiency, weapons ready, scanning for threats. Weber raised his hands high above his head and stepped forward slowly. He wore his Wehrmacht uniform but no weapons. No sidearm, no knife. Nothing that could be interpreted as threatening. Behind him, Anna raised a white sheet tied to a broomstick. An improvised flag of surrender. Of plea. An officer emerged from the lead vehicle. He was young, perhaps 30, with sharp, intelligent eyes, and a red cross armband marking him as Medical Corps. Captain James Morrison. He surveyed the scene with professional caution. His rifle was lowered, but ready. Behind him, his men spread out, forming a perimeter. Weber could see the suspicion in their faces, the hatred. He did not blame them. They had fought their way across France, seen the camps, seen what the Reich had done. They had every right to hate. "I am Dr. Friedrich Weber," Weber called out in English. His accent was thick but understandable. "I am the chief medical officer of this facility. I am not here to surrender as a combatant. I am here to beg for your help." Morrison approached slowly. His expression was hard, carved from stone. "Why should we help you, doctor? Your people started this war. Your people killed millions. Give me one good reason why I should waste American medicine on German soldiers." Weber nodded. He had expected this. "You are right. Absolutely right. We did start this war, and we lost. We deserve everything that has happened to us. But Captain, the men inside that building are not your enemy anymore. They are not soldiers. They are dying boys who need medicine desperately. I have no morphine, no penicillin, no plasma, no surgical supplies. If you do not help them, they will all be dead within a week, maybe less. I am not asking you to forgive us. I am not asking for mercy for myself. I am asking you to be better than we were, to save lives, because that is what doctors do." Morrison studied him for a long moment. His jaw was clenched. "How many?" "Over 200. Morrison's expression darkened. "That is a lot of supplies, doctor. Supplies we need for our own men. Men who are fighting to end this war." "I understand completely," Weber said quietly. "But Captain, you have supplies. We have nothing. I'm asking you to look at them, just look, and then decide. If you choose to leave them, I will understand. But at least see what you would be leaving behind." Morrison turned to his men. "Secure the perimeter. Davis, take a team and check the building for threats." Then to Weber, "If this is a trap, doctor, if there are soldiers waiting inside, you will be the first one to die." Weber met his eyes. "There are no soldiers, Captain. Only patients." Morrison nodded curtly. "Show me." Weber led Morrison and 3 armed American soldiers toward the hospital entrance. Anna stepped aside, holding the white flag. As they entered, the smell hit them immediately. Morrison's face went pale. One of the soldiers behind him gagged and turned away. "Jesus Christ," Morrison whispered. Weber said nothing. There was nothing to say. The scene spoke for itself. Rows and rows of wounded men in various stages of suffering. Some were conscious, staring at the Americans with fear and hope mixed together. Others were delirious with fever. Still others lay motionless, and Weber could not tell if they were sleeping or dead. The floor was stained with blood and other fluids. The windows were broken, letting in flies. It looked like something from the Middle Ages, not a 20th century hospital. "How long?" Morrison asked. His voice was strained. "How long have they been like this?" "Weeks," Weber said. "We ran out of proper supplies in March. Since then, we have been reusing bandages, boiling instruments, trying to make do. But you cannot treat gangrene with hope, Captain. You cannot cure sepsis with prayers." Morrison walked slowly down the central aisle. He stopped at Ernst Muller's bed. The boy was barely conscious. His leg was black up to the knee now. The smell was overwhelming. Morrison had seen combat, had treated wounded men under fire. But this was different. This was systematic abandonment. "What is his status?" "Gangrene," Weber said quietly. "He needs amputation immediately, but I have no anesthesia to put him under safely. No blood for transfusion if he goes into shock. No antibiotics to prevent post-surgical infection. So he lies here and dies by inches. Morrison's fists clenched. He turned to his men. Get everyone in here now. I want every medic, every corpsman, every goddamn person with medical training inside this building in 5 minutes. Bring the penicillin. Bring the plasma. Bring the morphine. Bring everything. One of the soldiers, a private with sergeant stripes and hatred burning in his eyes, stepped forward. Sir, with all due respect, these are Nazis. These are the men who killed our buddies. Why are we helping them? His name tag read Carter. Morrison looked at Private Carter and his voice was firm, but not unkind. Because Private Carter, that is what separates us from them. We do not let people die when we can save them. We do not abandon the wounded. We do not sacrifice human decency for ideology. That is why we are going to win this war. Not because we have better tanks or more planes. Because we are better than this. Morrison gestured at the hospital. We are better than leaving men to rot, even if they were our enemies. Carter looked like he wanted to argue. His jaw worked. His hands shook. But he stayed silent and nodded. Yes, sir. He turned and ran outside shouting orders. Within minutes, American medics flooded the building. They brought crates of penicillin, bottles of plasma in glass containers, clean white bandages that looked like luxury items, real anesthesia, surgical kits with gleaming instruments, things Weber had not seen in months, things he had begun to think were myths. Anna watched in amazement as the Americans worked. They moved with efficiency, born of experience. One medic knelt beside Ernst Miller without hesitation. He did not recoil from the smell, did not show disgust, just professional assessment. What is his status? The medic asked Weber. Gangrene, advanced. He needs amputation immediately, but I had no way to do it safely. The medic nodded. We can do it. We have morphine and a full field surgical kit. Let me get the captain. An hour later, Ernst was under anesthesia, and Captain Morrison was performing the amputation with Weber assisting. It felt surreal. A German doctor and an American captain working side by side to save a German soldier. Morrison worked with steady hands and confident precision. He had clearly done this before. Many times. He cut through the rotted flesh, sawed through the bone, cauterized blood vessels. The whole procedure took 40 minutes. When it was over, Morrison sutured the stump carefully and administered a massive dose of penicillin directly into Ernst's bloodstream. He will live, Morrison said, washing his hands in a basin of clean water. The infection should clear in 72 hours with the antibiotics. He will need physical therapy eventually. A prosthetic. But he will live. Weber felt tears sting his eyes. He had not cried in years. Not since Stalingrad. Not since he had realized what they were part of. Thank you, Captain. Thank you. Morrison looked at him. Do not thank me yet, Doctor. We have 200 more to go. Private Henry Carter stood in the corner watching the surgery. He had not wanted to be there. Had not wanted to see a German soldier saved. But Morrison had ordered him to assist, so he had obeyed. Now he looked at Ernst. Just a kid. 19, maybe 20. Not a monster. Not a fanatic. Just a dying kid with a mother somewhere who would have gotten a letter saying he died heroically. Carter thought about his own brother, Michael, 22 years old, killed at Omaha Beach. Shot by a German machine gunner while wading through the surf. Carter had hated Germans ever since, had sworn revenge, had volunteered for every dangerous mission hoping to kill as many as possible. But looking at that boy's face pale and slack with anesthesia, he could not hold on to his hatred. It felt hollow suddenly, meaningless. This kid had not killed Michael. This kid had probably been terrified his whole time in combat, just like Michael had been, just like Carter was every single day. They were all just kids sent to kill each other by old men who would never face consequences. Over the next 3 days, the Americans worked around the clock. They set up a proper triage system. They treated infections with penicillin. They set broken bones that had healed wrong and had to be rebroken. They performed surgeries. They gave blood transfusions. Private Carter found himself working alongside Anna. At first, he barely spoke to her. But slowly, as they worked side by side, treating patient after patient, he began to talk. She told him about her brother Hans. He told her about Michael. They shared grief across the chasm of war. Of the 217 men in that hospital, 173 survived. 44 died. But those 44 died with morphine to ease their pain, with clean bandages, with someone holding their hand. They died with dignity. Without American intervention, nearly all 200 would have died in agony. Weber worked alongside Morrison for 3 days straight, learning about penicillin and plasma and new surgical techniques, learning about portable X-ray machines and blood typing and a dozen other advances German medicine had fallen behind on. They did not talk much about the war. There was nothing to say. The war was over. Now there was only the work of saving lives, the work of being human again. On the third night, Morrison and Weber sat outside sharing a cigarette. The sky was clear and stars were visible. For a moment it was almost peaceful. Morrison broke the silence. "Why did you do it, Doctor? You could have fled, gone into hiding, disappeared into the chaos. Instead you stayed and begged your enemy for help. Why?" Weber exhaled smoke slowly. "Because I am a doctor, Captain. That is supposed to mean something. For years I told myself I was serving my country, that I was doing my duty. But my country used me to enable a war machine that devoured young men by the thousands. I cannot undo what I was part of. I cannot bring back the dead. But I could do this one thing. I could save these men. I could admit that we failed them, that I failed them. And I could ask for help even if it meant humiliation, even if it meant admitting everything we believed was a lie." Morrison nodded slowly. "It took courage. To admit you could not do it alone. To admit defeat." Weber laughed bitterly. "It was not courage, Captain. It was desperation and shame. We built an empire on lies and called it strength. We murdered millions and called it destiny. But real strength is admitting when you are wrong. Real strength is asking for help. Real strength is valuing human life over pride. I learned that too late. But at least I learned it." Private Carter approached them hesitantly. He looked different than he had 3 days ago. Less angry, less certain. "Captain, Doctor, I just wanted to say." He struggled for words. "I wanted to hate you. All of you. I wanted every German to suffer for what happened to my brother. But watching you work these past days, watching you care about these men, even when your own country abandoned them, watching you save lives instead of taking them." Carter paused and wiped his eyes. "My brother Michael would not want me to hate. He was better than that. He would want me to be better, to choose life over revenge." Weber stood and extended his hand. "I am sorry for your brother, Private Carter. I am sorry for Michael. I am sorry for all of it, for every death, for every family destroyed. I cannot undo any of it, but I am sorry." Carter hesitated, then shook Weber's hand firmly. "It does not make it okay, Doctor. Nothing can make it okay. But maybe it is a start. Maybe choosing to save lives instead of taking them is how we become human again." Carter walked away, and Weber felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Real fragile hope that maybe the world could be rebuilt, that maybe humanity was not completely lost. Anna found Weber as the sun set on the 4th day. "The Americans are leaving tomorrow. What will happen to us? What happens to Germany now?" Weber shrugged. "Trials, probably. Prison, maybe. I do not know. I do not care, really. The men will live. 73 of them will go home to their families. That is enough. That has to be enough." Anna smiled sadly. "Do you think we will be forgiven? Do you think Germany will be forgiven?" Weber looked at the hospital where German soldiers were recovering thanks to American medicine. "Forgiveness is not something we can ask for, Anna. It is something we have to earn. And it will take a lifetime, maybe several lifetimes. But we have to try. We have to be better than we were, better than what we allowed ourselves to become." The next morning, Morrison prepared to move his unit out. Other American forces would be arriving to take control of the hospital and the town. Weber approached him one final time. "Captain, I want you to know this will stay with me for the rest of my life. What you did here, you could have let us suffer. You had every right, every reason, but you chose mercy. You chose humanity. That means everything." Morrison met his eyes. "Dr. Weber, we did not win this war by being like you. We won by being better. By holding on to our humanity even when it would have been easier to abandon it. Remember that. Teach that. Make sure the next generation knows that being strong does not mean being cruel. Being powerful does not mean being heartless." The American convoy rolled out, leaving behind enough medical supplies to last for weeks and a small detachment to oversee the hospital until proper authorities arrived. Weber watched them go. The same tanks that 4 days ago represented his worst fear now represented his greatest hope. Humanity still existed, even after everything, even after all the evil, even after all the death. There were still people who chose life over death, who chose compassion over revenge, who chose to be better. Ernst Müller woke up that afternoon. His leg was gone, but he was alive. He looked at Weber, confused and frightened. "Herr Doctor, what happened? Where is my leg?" Weber sat beside him and explained gently. "We had to amputate Ernst. The infection was too far gone. But you are alive. The Americans saved you." Ernst's eyes filled with tears. The Americans. Why? We were their enemy. We killed their friends. Why would they save me? Weber smiled. "Because they are better than we were taught, Ernst. Because they value human life. And because one day we must learn to be better too. We must learn that strength comes from compassion. That greatness comes from humanity, not from hate, not from ideology, from simple human decency." In the weeks that followed, Weber was arrested and questioned by Allied investigators. He told them everything: the collapse of the medical system, the lies of the regime, the moment he chose to ask for help. The Allied investigators were surprised. Most German officers denied everything or blamed others, or claimed they were just following orders. Weber blamed himself. He took responsibility for his part in the machine, for his silence, for his complicity, and in doing so he found a kind of peace. Not redemption. Redemption was too grand a word, but peace. The peace of honesty, the peace of accepting responsibility. He was held for 6 months, then released. The investigators determined that his actions saving Allied lives when he could have fled or resisted demonstrated genuine remorse. He was prohibited from practicing medicine for 2 years. After that, he worked as a civilian doctor in a small town in Bavaria. He never spoke much about the war. When people asked, he said only that he had learned the cost of ideology, the price of lies, the value of human life. In his small office, he kept only one decoration: a photograph. Captain James Morrison standing beside him outside that makeshift hospital. 2 former enemies who became something more. A reminder that even in the darkest times humanity can survive if we have the courage to choose it, if we have the strength to admit when we are wrong, if we have the wisdom to ask for help. The photograph was faded now, but the lesson remained clear. The lesson of Dr. Friedrich Weber is not about redemption. Redemption is too easy a word. It is about responsibility, about admitting when you are wrong, about doing the right thing even when it costs you everything, even when it means betraying everything you were taught, even when it means admitting your whole life was built on lies. In April 1945, a proud German doctor swallowed his pride and said the words that saved 200 lives. "We cannot save them. Only you can." And America answered, not with revenge, not with cruelty, but with medicine, with compassion, with humanity. That is the true victory, not the tanks or the planes or the battles, but the choice to be human, to value life over ideology, to choose compassion over revenge, to be better than our worst instincts. That is what separates civilization from barbarism. That is what makes us human. And that is why, in the end, despite everything, humanity survived. If you found this story powerful, hit that subscribe button so you never miss these incredible true stories from history that show us who we really are. Drop a like if this moved you and let me know in the comments what other untold World War II stories you want to hear. What moments of humanity in the darkest times should we explore next? Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.